Everybody tuning in. Thanks for tuning into the webinar today. I've got an all-star panel of experts within the internship realm. I'll make sure I turn down the tablet here. I'll be trying to take questions on both LinkedIn Live and Zoom. So if you catch me looking at two different screens, that's why. The purpose of today's panel, we wanted to talk a bit about internships, why they're important. I know it's a challenge right now. A lot of companies out there are struggling to run successful programs. Really, it's something that personally, I don't have expertise in internships. It's not my realm. It's not something that I focus in, but everyone else in the panel we have today, who we'll introduce in a minute, are all very focused in this area. And my own personal experience is just that we've had remarkable success at Hirewell in terms of having internships, which then turn into full-time employees. And we've just seen the power and impact it has, not just on the students themselves and kind of helping them develop their careers, but also for us, it's enabled us to do things we wouldn't have otherwise really been able to do and allowed us to kind of get new areas. So it really has a really positive impact both on individuals as well as companies. So I want to talk more about that. And obviously there's a lot of challenges with the quarantine and COVID, everything else, and companies are forced to be in a completely remote environment, which is not something anyone probably thought they'd have to do with internship programs. And because of that, we've unfortunately seen a lot of companies cancel their programs. And I know that for some companies, it's financial. It's just not a lot they can probably do about it. But with other companies, it's know-how. It's just not really knowing how to pull it off, even though they probably could, which is why we're having the discussion today. We've had several people involved here who are having wonderful success with internship programs and have insights, and that's what we want to talk about. So to do quick intros, and I'll do the high-level intro. I'm not going to read bios just because I think it's really boring to hear me talk. I'd rather hear you guys talk about yourselves a little bit. So first, Elise Gelwicks, the founder of Eleview. I think you're on.
Yes.
So Elise, yeah, thanks for joining. Tell everyone just a little bit about yourself and what you do at Eleview.
Yeah, so I run a firm called Eleview Consulting based here in Chicago, and we work with companies to turn their young professionals into leaders through interpersonal skill workshops. So we create professional development programs to help students transition from the world of academia into the working world, which is filled with, critical conversations, receiving feedback, writing emails, all the skills that you don't learn in college but are essential to the working world.
Awesome. Next up, Valerie Robbins, she's Employer Relations Coordinator at Columbia College.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. So what I do in the Career Center at Columbia College Chicago is serve as a liaison between the Career Center and our employers for all professional incoming recruiting consultations. So that means we work with a lot of recruiters within the arts and supporting students on learning how to use their liberal arts education and transition that into a meaningful career. So thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us. Next up, we have from Interview Stream. He is a digital marketing program manager, and he's responsible for managing a small team of interns, Esteban Gomez.
Good morning. I'm happy to be here today. Like you said, I am the digital marketing program manager at Interview Stream. I am responsible for the day-to-day management of our interns, making sure that they are set up for success and helping them with anything that I can.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us as well. And lastly, I wanted to welcome aboard a campus recruiting coordinator at Huron Consulting Group, Janae Allen.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Yes, I am a coordinator on our campus team, and so I support the recruiters across different practices on our team. And so I help with the planning and logistics around like our fall campus season, as well as our internship program.
Got it. Awesome. So everyone, thanks for joining. And I want to kind of start this off, and kind of the format we're going to follow is I want to lay a little bit of groundwork. So we got some stats and stuff like that we want to share in terms of how things are looking so far this year. But then I want to pose a question we'll kind of go around in a circle and pose questions to different people on the panel. But I want everyone else to feel free to chime in because I know everyone here has different experience and different insights. So first off, Elise, if you can help me out, because I know you've got some stats on this. Why is it so important for companies to continue with their programs? Like, I know there's a lot of in terms of like percentage of like interns who turn into full-time employees. Why is it good for companies to kind of continue with this? Obviously it's great for students, but why should companies feel vested this is something they should really try to continue with?
Right. So internship programs are typically the talent pipeline for a company. So there's a mutual vetting process throughout the internship program where a student says, yes, I want to work here full time. The company says, yes, you're a right fit for us, or you both agree this isn't the right fit. Why that's important is because employee retention is a challenge that all companies have been facing in the really strong job market that we've had. And over 50% of recent college grads will quit their first job before the 1-year mark. So companies are losing a ton of money in training and developing, onboarding these new hires, signing bonuses, because they leave for the next best opportunity. But if a company hires their interns to return full-time, that returning intern has a 20% higher retention rate over both a 1-year and a 5-year period based on who did an intern. And that all goes back to that mutual vetting process where both parties know what they're signing up for, and it's an increased likelihood that it's a good fit and the professional stays at the company longer.
Absolutely. I can tell you just from a firsthand as a recruiter, that's something I always hear at kind of the junior levels, companies who struggle to find that right fit because they aren't maybe necessarily good at kind of interviewing or really kind of vetting that, people out on that junior level. And internship programs are a great way to kind of getting that done in real time, the real world experience. So let's talk also, Valerie, if you can help me out with this one, like 2020, what do things look like? So I can tell you anecdotally, a lot of companies are canceling and a lot of companies are not doing their internship programs, but I don't know if I've got like great metrics around what that really looks like. What have you seen and what have you seen so far?
So, and these are numbers from NACE and from Handshake. So NACE is the National Association of Colleges and Employers. And we've seen about 22 to 23% of employers revoke their internships. And most of the industries that were really impacted were the arts and entertainment fields, which is 37%, of people lost their jobs or their internship programs, 60% in hospitality, 44% in food and beverages. So we're seeing, quite a significant impact to the student population in terms of their internships being revoked.
Okay. So let's talk about what companies can do with it. Because I think there's a lot of places that they're just unsure. Maybe they were kind of new to running internship programs to begin with, and they really didn't know how to do it, even when things weren't fully remote. So I guess starting ahead at the beginning, like Esteban, one thing I want to ask you is, because you've been kind of in this position kind of directly, onboarding orientation for virtual programs. What are you guys at Interview Stream doing, and what have you seen success with to make sure that works seamlessly?
Yeah, I think some of the biggest things that we have to realize when we're onboarding and kind of putting together an orientation plan for interns is that, you are online, you're fully online. And so normal onboarding, you're in a conference room for 8 hours usually, and you have multiple people coming in and out giving presentations. When you're in a video call like this one, people get disengaged, they lose interest, they get tired from just being in a Zoom call for more than 4 or 5 hours. So one of the things that we focus on is trying to limit the amount of sessions per day that we offer so that at the end of the day, our interns are actually, kind of understanding everything we're throwing at them without feeling too overwhelmed. And the second thing that we do to kind of fill in the gaps with the amount of time that they'll have free is maybe assign them a couple of homework assignments. Homework assignments that, maybe are simple as, do a little bit of research into the industry, into our competitors. Go on social media and follow, again, our competitors, follow certain influencers in our space so that they can get a little bit more acclimated with, again, the company, the industry, and ultimately what they're going to be working on moving forward.
From an engagement standpoint, it's a lot of good things you're bringing up. I don't know, Janae, did you have any thoughts on in terms of kind of engaging interns and how you can kind of keep them interested in the company and what you're doing while they're not physically there?
Yes, so in terms of orientation, we do try to find ways that we can make it interactive. So we have a scavenger hunt for like our company's intranet. We do like a case workshop also, and we also have presentation skills that we give them as well. And then the interns will go ahead and prepare a short presentation, and then later that week of their orientation, they will present it to the full group as well. So just finding ways to make it interactive so they're not just sitting and listening to presenters for the first week.
Any, I guess kind of on that topic, I don't know, Elise or Valerie or Esteban, again, like in terms of engagement, anything else you guys have seen or anything else you're recommending that the companies do to kind of keep interns engaged without, Zoom conferencing them to death all the time?
Yeah, I think the three biggest things that we focus on when it comes to engagement, I think the first one being you have to solidify their goals and objectives. So before you even bring somebody on that's an intern, think about all the things that they're going to be working on and actually write those down into a list. When that intern starts, actually show them that list and communicate, hey, over the next couple of months, this is everything that you're going to be focusing on. I think internships can have a level of gray areas where interns can, they're left with just scratching their heads trying to figure out what to work on. So trying to eliminate that is something that's going to increase engagement. The second thing is that I really try to focus on with the interns at Interview Stream is trying to immerse them in training and learning opportunities. And then also tying that back and everything they do to their own careers, their own goals, their own objectives, because that creates a certain level of ownership in everything that they do for you. To add to that, I'm a big fan of experiential learning, and a big part of that is being able to reflect on your experiences. So one of the things that we do is also hand out at the end of the internship program, we'll actually assign a reflection project where I ask the interns, think about everything you just did over the past couple of months. What went right, what went wrong, what did you learn? And most importantly, how are you going to apply that moving forward in your own experiences? And then the final thing is, kind of to build on something Janae said, is try to incorporate as much of the company culture into what the interns are doing. If you have Zoom happy hours, invite them to the Zoom happy hours. Even during onboarding, try to bring in other team members across the organization so that they can start meeting other people that it's not just going to be their hiring manager, the one person they're talking to day in and day out.
Elise, was there anything in addition you're saying with a lot of your clients in this area?
Yeah, so two things to add. I think the two most important things for companies to think about are one, creating a lot of structure, more structure than you would even normally have in an in-person experience. And then also setting and managing expectations. So if we start with structure, what does that mean? It means having very defined project objectives. I see Jeff Moss in the comments also included that. You want to be very clear on what is your schedule for the day, what is expected of you in terms of the work output, and then also managing expectations on when do you need to be online? Is it okay for you to go for a run at 12 p.m. during the lunch hour? What are those expectations? And I'm seeing that particularly with my clients who are global law firms, where a lot of law firms are seeing a decrease in billable hours. So not only can they not have enough work for their full-time attorneys, but for their summer associates coming on, there's concerns over how do we keep them busy for 8 to 12 hours a day, which is the norm for an in-person experience. So being very clear and saying, look, we know you're not going to be busy from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. That's okay. If you can log on for a few hours in the morning, log on for a few in the afternoon, we know you're doing the best you can, and things are a little bit different in the virtual environment. So you want to take out that element of interns feeling insecure about what should I be doing, what do they want from me, and just be very clear in the program structure and expectations.
Valerie, from a university standpoint, what are you guys seeing in terms of like helping, because you're kind of the go-between between students and companies, right? So you work with a lot of organizations and you're kind of building those relationships, kind of help create that pipeline. What are you guys seeing right now in terms of like helping students and employers connect? Are there any other types of programs that you're doing, or I guess tell me about the experience you guys are having right now?
So for us, what we're really, engaged in is upskilling students for the summer. So clearly they've lost their internships. So we're working with employers to do, like we just recently had a careers in tech panel where our alumni share with our students about how their liberal arts education translated into a career in tech. We're doing a lot of IG live events with employers who are sharing, information about they'll be hiring in the fall, or sharing sizzle reels about what their organization does, or virtual tours. We also have a Career Center Lives on IG where we speak to industry professionals about their journey into their creative practice that they have now. And we're also doing a one-on-one week with creative professionals where students and alumni get a chance to talk to people for 20 minutes about, You know, what should I have in my portfolio when an internship program does open up? How should I present myself in a virtual interview? So we're really essentially helping students to synthesize their skills that they've learned over the summer and prepare them for when those fall or spring internships open up. We're also, of course, sharing micro internships as well. So we're doing a number of things to make sure that they're prepared for and are able to pivot in anything that they would like to do.
Let's talk about success and how things might be a little bit different. I don't know if Janae and Esteban and really all you guys, like, are you, I guess, have the success metrics or how you're kind of evaluating interns and what the success of the program, is it look any different now? Like, what adjustments have you made in terms of kind of how you're evaluating kind of the progress and things like that?
Yeah, I can hop in on this one. So I don't think it will change that much. I think the one thing that will change is the cadence of how much we check in with the intern. And so to make sure that we are measuring the intern's success on a standardized, level, whether they're in person or virtually, we use our core competencies to base the intern's success around those. So teamwork and organizational commitment, client service focus, developing yourself and others, and technical knowledge. So by basing the intern's performance on these core competencies, it makes it easier to transfer measuring their performance to a virtual approach. And so we also have the interns complete a goals and expectation sheet, at the beginning of the internship, so we know how to set them up for success best, and then also having various check-ins with their supervisors and their peer mentors and coaches as well.
Yeah, I think I would agree with everything. I don't necessarily see the success metrics changing too much. I think being able to, you're just going to be communicating and maybe checking up on those success metrics, making sure that the interns are where they're supposed to be based on the time frame. Something that might take somebody in person, 2 weeks to complete, and virtually it might take 3 weeks to complete. So being honest about, how long it's going to take the interns to complete certain things and fulfill those success metrics is very important.
Okay. One thing I wanted to ask you, Elise, I know there's one thing you want to talk about, risks of a company hosting a virtual program right now. Is there anything that companies should be kind of thinking about, maybe they haven't? Is there anything that you would kind of advise companies to keep an eye out for?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, a lot of young professionals feel very insecure as they enter the workforce, and this stems from they're coming from college where they had specific grades. They knew exactly where they stood. They had a 93% in geometry and a 75% in history. When you switch into the dynamic working world, you don't have those quantitative metrics to let you know how you're doing. So this builds a lot of insecurity, questions about how am I doing. So it's important for companies to over-communicate, over-share expectations, provide more feedback than they had even in the past in an in-person experience, to avoid the interns sitting in their living room just feeling horrible about their experience because they don't know what they should be doing, they don't know how they're doing, they don't know what their manager thinks of them. So go overboard on giving feedback and just communicating in general so that there's no questions about how their performance is and then what is expected of them.
That's something, it's actually a good point, because I think that's something that we learned even pretty quickly in a regular environment, is just like the need of over communication. Like, no one likes being a micromanager, but when you're in, and so I think people are afraid of over communicating because they feel like they're doing that. But at the same time too, like when you're not in the same location as someone else, like they don't pick up on your nonverbal cues and you can't pick up on theirs, and when they might be stuck, when they might not know something. So if you're not constantly kind of in touch and having those kind of checkpoints, a lot of that gets lost. So it's an excellent point. One thing I wanted to talk about too is, Valerie, I know this was a topic that you kind of hit on and we kind of discussed earlier, making sure things are equitable and inclusive. A lot of students, a lot of interns, come from different situations. And I know that you had some examples of what companies can be doing to make sure, a lot of organizations maybe weren't planning on having maybe don't have to think about these things when it's an on-site internship. But what are some things that you've seen, and what should companies kind of think of to make sure that internships are being kind of inclusive?
I mean, the first thing, of course, even before you get the internship opportunity, think about, the content of your internship description. You may have language that may alienate, people from applying to your opportunity. I always think about, I've had employers who have posted things like cultural fit terms in their job descriptions. So, we understand that employers mean supporting your values and missions, but if I'm looking on your page and I see no one that represents my identity, or I don't hear from them in terms of a blog post or in positions of authority, I may not consider that opportunity. So, design a multi-step process that makes the job application process accessible to people of color. And celebrating assets of, some of your team member so that they can, support the student and encourage a sense of belonging and take an interest in how they think about solving problems and making decisions in your organization.
Excellent point.
Those are just some tips.
Does anyone else have anything to add on that? I want to make sure I'm opening this up and not just rifling off the next question. So I didn't know if
I could
go on.
because I think too, I think sometimes, we have a lot of employers who have never done an internship program before. So I think it's important to sort of backtrack and give them some tips for if they're thinking about going into the virtual space. You have to think about your internship description. You have to sort of think about the messaging that you're sending to people. You also have to train your staff and make sure that they are supporting the student too in the way that they need to develop. And all of that is by building authentic and trusting relationships. As Elise said, as Esteban and Janae said, you have to over communicate. So you have to clearly define expectations, but you also have to be willing to listen to the student as well, because they may actually surprise you. They may give you something that you didn't think about before. So I think it's a mutual relationship that, a mutual partnership that should help foster better relationships in the workspace.
And I can add quickly with that is also just being understanding that, all the interns are not going to be in the same situations. Their situation may be different to maybe they have multiple roommates, or, they're back at home with their families and they have siblings, or they have to maybe go to a coffee shop for internet. So making sure that they are comfortable with, telling the team or, their project manager, the circumstances that they're in. And also it's our job to be understanding in that aspect as well.
Yeah, I have to agree with Janae, because technical considerations and operational considerations should be thought of before you have an intern come on, because as she said, like, some students don't have access to the internet. If they, like she said, if they have, people in the background, how can the student really learn from you if there's a barrier there? So, and also I think too, I know that companies are having a hard time paying their students, but I think when you pay an intern, whether that's a stipend or a $25 for phone call or software in terms of the internet, I think that helps open the door to more people participating in your program. So I hope that helps.
Yeah. And I think we had a question come in. Oops, I think I'm blocking the screen I had on LinkedIn Live. Apologize, guys. So one question from someone who's watching on Zoom: tech needs of anyone you're hiring. Do they have everything they need from a technical standpoint to be successful in internship or job? How do you make sure? I guess you're setting them up from success just from having the tools. And I guess Elise and Janae and Esteban, what have you guys done at your companies? I guess, or what have you seen?
So I think there can be a simple onboarding checklist, especially with technology. So there's almost an onboarding kit that you send out that has everything they need from a tech standpoint, and then a call maybe with your IT specialist to help everyone get set up with their laptop, with their mouse, with their dual monitors, and walk them through all of the computer systems, especially if you have internal systems or even something as simple as Microsoft Outlook. A lot of students haven't used Microsoft Outlook before, so walk them through it. Don't assume that they know how to do a calendar invitation or anything like that, and just block off the time and perhaps even offer office hours for them to schedule time one-on-one or come in and talk with an IT specialist virtually to get the support that they need. I did want to hit on one thing that Valerie had mentioned with companies going through financial hardship right now. There's plenty of companies, and especially in particular industries, that are seeing significant decreases in revenue and are making the decision to cancel their internship programs. Now we're already at June 9th, so if those decisions are going to be made, they likely already have to cancel the internship program. But when we started out, James, you asked me, why is it so important for companies to have internship programs? Not only does it create this talent pipeline, but it shapes your identity as an employer. So your brand is so precious and will determine the caliber of students that you are able to attract now and years from now. So for companies that have made the decision to cancel their internship programs due to budget cuts or whatever it may be, I would like to encourage them to think a little bit creatively and think about how can we protect our reputation with the top minds of the next generation. And one creative way to do that is to say, you know, in, let's say, late July, we're going to do a 1-week program where we introduce you to executives, we give you a project to do, you do a report out, and it's 1 week. We'll pay you for it. What does this do? It allows students to put something on their resume for the summer, which is what they all care about. This is setting them up for future job opportunities. It allows them to say, I had that internship at KPMG or whatever it is. I know some of the Big Four consulting firms are taking this approach, and it's a great way to protect your reputation and show that, you know, we might not be able to have the internship experience that we had promised back in October, but we're going to do this for you just so you can learn, get exposure, and put something on your resume. And that's a very cost-efficient way of doing it.
Excellent. I'm trying to see if there's any other questions from the panelists, but there's some other stuff we wanted to cover here as well too. What was I going to say? So Janae, actually, one thing I want to ask you is you kind of mentioned this when we were talking beforehand, social events, which is still a big part of any kind of working culture, you know, and I think a lot of us, I mean, everyone who didn't use Zoom is using it now. So anyone who didn't use Zoom 2 months ago. What are you guys doing from that standpoint at Huron? Like what kind of social events do you have planned, and how do you kind of keep everyone kind of engaged in the culture there?
Yes, so before we even started planning our social events, we sent out a survey to the interns to gauge their interest, because we didn't want to be in a position where we were, you know, brainstorming all of these social events that we were assuming that interns would be interested in. Then they get here and they're like, no, you know, we wouldn't want to, you know, do any of those. And so we came up with the results that we had, and from those we will do virtual happy hours. We're going to be hosting instructor-led workouts, going to have a book club, movie nights, and hosting maybe a game night, something like trivia. And so I think these are just some ways that we can, you know, keep them engaged and keep them excited throughout the program.
Awesome. Does anyone else, you guys have any experiences with that you want to share? Or?
With one of my clients, the concern has been, how do we create camaraderie amongst the intern class and build that, their relationships with one another. And so this is kind of a blend of the social activities, ways to have fun, but to create mini projects for interns to get into groups, work together, and do a presentation out, or Maybe it's a peer teach session where one individual is a whiz at Excel and they do a lunch and learn for the other interns, or maybe a group of interns gets together and figures out what kind of presentation can we lead for our peers. Those are great ways to allow interns to build relationships with one another, do it in a fun way, not super high pressure, and really show off their expertise.
Yeah, I would add to that, one of the things that we do at Interview Stream is, try to schedule certain hours within the weeks where we, whether it's a lunch or, we invite them to kind of just sit in on a video call and we'll talk about things, in their personal life, their passions, what they're interested in, the things that they're facing, if they're taking any classes in school, what those classes are, what kind of projects they're working on, just so that they can get to know each other just outside of work. They can find similarities. And again, just try to build that, like Elise said, that camaraderie between them.
Yeah, and I'll add to that as well. To your point, Elise, about having the interns network with one another. So we have them do a case presentation. And so they're assigned the case at the beginning of the program. And then within small groups, they will work on the case throughout the duration of the program within small groups. And then later at the end, they will present their findings on the case. And so not only does this give the opportunity for the interns to network with one another, it also gives them the opportunity of learning how to balance their client work, their day-to-day work, and then also working on other projects as well.
And Jenny, I was going to ask too, this is kind of, this bleeds in with the other one. I want to talk about company culture. So obviously we were kind of getting into that, kind of talk about the social aspect. Is there anything else though, in particular, specific to Huron, or that you guys kind of stress to make sure kind of your values are really kind of coming through and being instilled? I don't know if there's anything additional you had there.
Yeah, so in the beginning of the internship, we'll have a leadership breakfast. And so this is going to give the interns visibility to our leadership, and to also learn more about Huron from leadership perspective. And then also we want interns to connect with as many people as possible. So inviting people from their project teams to come to virtual happy hours, and also having them do informational interviews to learn about different practices within the firm from different people. And also with it, social responsibility being important to our culture, we will also have a virtual community service event for the interns to participate in as well.
Cool. I'm trying to kind of covered a lot here. Was there anything else? One thing I wanted to ask was in terms of duration and timeframes. Is there anything you guys are seeing are different now, I guess, than compared to a traditional internship? Like hours during the day, length of the internships. I've noticed some companies mentioning some things about this, but again, it's kind of anecdotal. So just kind of curious what your experiences have been.
I've seen quite a variety in my clients. So a big part of what we do at Eleview is working with companies to design their internship programs and then create the programming to make it a great experience. In general, in the legal industry, law firms are shortening the duration from 10 to 12 weeks to 4 to 5 weeks, kicking off in July and making it all virtual. Organizations such as Abbott Pharmaceuticals, our kickoff is several weeks later than it had been. There had been thoughts of, interns going to their local offices rather than just flying everyone into headquarters. That's not happening. And then a lot of the consumer products companies are actually keeping the same duration of their program, and then just setting those expectations of when you're supposed to be online. We'd like for you to be online by 10 a.m. and stay on till at least 2 p.m. and just giving those windows of everyone's online during these times, and then shift your schedule as needed, and even giving guidance on if you have a doctor's appointment or if you're going for a walk or whatever it is, just put it on your calendar so that everyone feels in the loop, because we can't see you just walk out to go grab lunch or things that would normally happen in the workplace.
Yeah, I would double down on that. I think in terms of just daily hours, having that understanding that with everything going on, they might have to shift certain things. Maybe they work a couple hours in the morning, a couple hours in the afternoon. They have to fit in, they're still taking classes online with the school. They have to fit in, doctor's appointment, things that might be going on outside of their internship program. Just having that understanding, and then setting expectations that they have to communicate on those things, whether it's actually setting things on their calendar, blocking off certain, times when they're not available, or, again, if something comes up at the last minute, setting that expectation that, hey, you have to let me know that you're not going to be working during those hours. I think it's, as long as you set those expectations from the beginning, you can avoid some of those issues moving forward.
Anyone else, anything to add? So one thing before we wrap up, and unfortunately, the LinkedIn Live, I can tell it's working, but for some reason my feed is frozen. So if anyone's been trying to comment there, I can see that the video is moving, but the comments aren't coming through. So apologize for that. It's not my favorite streaming platform. But I do want to, for all the panelists here, I want to thank everyone for coming, and I guess give everyone kind of one last kind of round in terms of like anything else you wanted to talk about today, anything you think is valuable that maybe we haven't hit on already in the panel discussion. Not to put anybody on the spot, but I guess we'll start with Valerie. I think you're on mute, by the way. Yeah, no worries. But if you have any closing thoughts, any last things you'd like to add?
I think, the internship program is really preparing students to transform the culture in which they would like to operate. So, clearly you're going to provide the student with, some really important steps that help them, be better in the workforce. And so that's my thoughts. So
awesome.
Yes.
Thanks for coming to the panel.
Thank you.
Janae, do you have anything you want to kind of wrap with, or anything else you wanted to mention we may have not communicated today?
Yes, so I just wanted to touch on some of the resources that we are giving our interns to help them be successful in their role and throughout the program. And so we do give the interns a peer mentor and a coach. So the peer will act as a mentor in getting them, comfortable with the company culture. And then the coach focuses more on professional development and developing those relationships with the interns to be, a mentor and a career counselor in that nature. And so we just want to make sure that we're giving them the resources that they need to be successful and that they feel supported throughout their duration of the program.
Awesome. Thanks again for coming. Esteban, any last thoughts you have for the panel?
Yeah, I think the biggest piece of advice is if you're thinking about starting an internship program, it's the first time you're doing it or you're moving virtually, don't be afraid to try new things. This is kind of a new experience for a lot of us. And as part of that, don't be afraid to receive and seek that feedback from the interns themselves so that you can learn what's working, what's not working, shift focuses if you need to, and then accommodate to ultimately make both the interns and the program successful.
Awesome. And again, thanks for coming. And Elise, I guess we'll wrap up with you. Any last imparting words of wisdom for everyone?
Yeah, I think the biggest point I can make is to look at this internship program in the broader context of what are you doing right now that's going to shape your reputation in the future and your ability to attract top talent. So instead of looking at it in the vacuum of summer 2020 when the world is falling apart, how can we set ourselves up to be the employer of choice for the top students who are graduating and entering the workforce? So how do you invest in these young professionals who are so eager to learn and grow and contribute, even if it's as simple as a LinkedIn Learning subscription or creating professional development programming for the interns? Really, I think that's just the best way to look at this. And I'll put my chat box here, so feel free to reach out to me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. So
Okay.
You were cutting out there for a second, but I can see it in the chat box as well. So
yeah, so feel free to reach out if there's any questions I can answer, or I'm happy to share resources that have been most effective with my clients.
Okay. Well, sounds great. Thanks for coming. Again, all of our panelists, I really appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to kind of to get deep into this topic. I know it's something we're all passionate about. Yeah, if anyone has in the previous post I made on LinkedIn, I tagged everyone in a lot of the posts, and when we're going to put the recap of this on YouTube, so it's available on demand, I'll make sure to have everyone kind of tagged in it as well. So if you want to reach out to any of our panelists, if you go through my feed, you'll find everyone there. other than that, yeah, guys, again, thanks for coming, and you know, best of luck for the rest of the year. And I'm sure I'll talk with all you guys soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.